Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about the Guardian. So the Canadian himself, the founder and leader of Alpha Flight, I believe. And yeah, we have his ability breakdown and his details, so on and so forth. So he is a tech champion. His prestige is alright. It's on the top scale. It's not game breaking, it's not going to be in top 10. It's kind of like on par with pretty much most of the champions released this year, so he's going to be a decent prestige option as well. His strengths, besides granting Guardian increased armor rating, his armor buff will provide him with bleed, energy and critical damage resistance. This makes him an extremely durable champion, so he's going to be able to take a punch, but that is kind of like his awakened ability. Guardian benefits from blocking his opponent's special attacks. Well-timed blocks allow him to gain perfect block chance and additional power. So that is kind of like an interesting mechanic, but all in all, I'm not even going to try and stretch this out this video too much. Guardian is quite basic, simple champion, I think, with very simple playstyle, and we're going to talk about it in a second. But anyway, so his weaknesses: armor break and nullify. If you can get rid of the armor buff, he's going to be susceptible to much more damage, and some of his abilities won't work. And yeah, true strike and unblockable specials would be also listed as his weakness. But yeah, so anyways, Guardian can't land any critical hits naturally, so that is interesting. He's what, third champion in the game who will never land any critical hits at all whatsoever. So that alone kind of like gives him a tiny bit of niche utility, but I'm going to be honest, in my opinion, he's going to be closer to Crossbones than to Guillotine 2099. But anyways, instead of landing critical hits, he deals a burst of shock damage that also scales with critical damage rating. Guardian can trigger the parry mastery against non-contact attacks, so that is again a nice small little thing that's going to make like Havoc matchup obviously easier, because he is going to be inherently good against Havocs because he has the armor buff. And yeah, parrying projectiles is always kind of like a useful thing, but if you are able to re-parry, then most of the time it's not as essential anymore, but it's still definitely a nice thing to have. And while Guardian's ability accuracy is below 100% for 3+ seconds, and he inflicts a shock debuff dealing 345.15 energy damage per second, this ability scales with base attack only. And that is kind of interesting, because if you're going to be going up against Domino, for instance, then you're going to be like shocking them up all the time and so on and so forth. So that's kind of a neat little nice trick. This is one of those things that you also need to keep in mind when you are facing off against Guardian. You do not want to bring in champions that reduce his ability accuracy, or you're just going to be continuously getting shock debuffs on yourself. Anyway, so armor up. He gains an indefinite armor up, increasing his armor rating by 2100 at the beginning of each fight. And if this buff is removed for any reason, it reapplies itself every 14 seconds. So it's pretty much kind of like a vulture. You just start a fight with an armor buff, and if anything happens to it, you get it back all the time, every 14 seconds. Now, force field. Force field charges last indefinitely, up to 3 charges. Any additional force field charge lasts 16 seconds. So this is again kind of like a Storm Pyramid X, where you have X amount of buffs that are permanent, and then you need to kind of like rush and use them in time. Gain 1 force field charge every 12 seconds, so he is going to be gaining them automatically. While Guardian has armor up, well-timed blocks against special attacks grant 100% perfect block chance over half a second. Each perfect block grants 6% of a bar of power. And yeah, so special attacks you want to block instead of dexing with this guy. And again, I can't but to help thinking about Alliance War and our latest Stubborn node, because basically Stubborn is going to penalize you for dexing special attacks and ever dexing, basically. And it's suspiciously how much Guardian seems to fit the MO of a really good counter to Stubborn global node in particular, because he's going to have high block proficiency, he's going to be durable, so you're going to be able to take a lot of hits and block, and you're going to be benefiting from actually blocking special attacks, and you're going to be gaining extra power, and that kind of like immediately automatically perfectly ties in with the Stubborn node in Alliance War, where that is what you effectively will have to do, otherwise opponent's going to go indestructible. So that's again a little bit of a suspicious behavior in my opinion from Kabam, because the timing of this champion and this ability coming out of the game with Stubborn defensive tactic. Well, okay, maybe it's just me. While Guardian has armor buff, again 15% chance per force field charge to auto block the opponent's special attack, gain a flat 15% chance against mutants. This auto block is considered a well-timed block and can reach a 75% chance max. So this is clearly a defensive ability. Well, more or less, whenever he has any force field charges, you kind of don't really want those special attacks, or there's always going to be a chance he's going to auto block those special attacks, and additionally consume 1 force field charges to block unblockable special attacks by mutants. And yes, he has this auto block ability, but I'm extremely grateful it's only on special attacks rather than basic attacks, because at the very least now you don't have to worry about getting parried and getting stunned. Yes, this is going to be something that's annoying when you go up against him, when he blocks your special attacks and you deal no damage and whatever, but at least it doesn't lead to you getting parry stunned and getting wrecked in the face. So this is clearly a defensive ability that's going to be frustrating many people, but that's what it's going to be. It's going to be largely frustration rather than clear on huge issue. I can automatically say this would be, however, extremely annoying on like power shield nodes, where you can only inflict damage to champions via special attacks, and if he has a solid chance to auto block your that could be an annoying combination there as well. But yeah, I largely think Guardian's going to be overly defensive champion, because his offensive gameplay seems to be really kind of like straightforward. Now this is one ability that I do like quite a bit. Consume 2 for ending a combo with a light attack. Consume 2 force field charges, inflicting power drain, removing 20% of opponent's current power. Now it's not going to be a great deal of power control, however the ability to kind of like push forward and prevent opponent from gaining level 3 is always kind of like welcome and encouraged in my opinions, and I do like the fact that it is there. It's not the most potent thing, it's kind of like comparable to, I don't know, to a degree to Stark Enhanced Spider-Man's heavy attack. He's not really a heavy control champion, but there are plenty of occasions where you are really happy that he has that heavy attack with the power drain. Right, anyway, so speaking of heavy attacks, the first hit consumes 1 force field charge to gain an armor buff, increasing armor rating by 2100 for 15 seconds. So this is how you can gain additional armor buffs should you have a need to. Yeah, a special one, after activation gain 3 force field charges. This is going to be also like an easy way how to chop up your force field charges, but this isn't going to be special that you typically want to use unless you want to access Taunt debuff exclusively. And I do believe that Taunt debuff at large is extremely underrated debuff. I have made a video specifically designated for Taunt debuff and all the champions in game, and there are surprisingly few champions in game who has access to Taunt debuff. And the fact that opponent's attack rating is reduced by 40%, first and foremost, that's incredibly potent as well. And obviously the fact that they throw special attacks easier kind of like lets the gameplay be a lot more smoother. However, the duration of 6 seconds and this Taunt debuff being tied exclusively to level 1s leads me to believe that this is going to be a very, very situational Taunt debuff, where you need to make a purposeful decision to go and seek out this Taunt in order to bypass like all or nothing or some other matchups where opponent throwing their special attacks is extremely important. But in an average fight, this is something that you cannot kind of like access easily without alternative cost, because by the look of it, special 1 is definitely going to be the one that's less used, and special 2 is going to be where the damage is at. So this has quite high alternative cost of having you sacrifice quite a bit of damage often if you want to reliably access this Taunt debuff, and I am not a fan of that, especially considering that there are many champions who access Taunt kind of like casually, like Stark Enhanced Spider-Man just Taunt by hitting the opponent. You don't need to keep throwing your level 1 and yeah, avoid your special 2, for instance. So yeah, that's that. But it's still a nice thing to have for sure. Now, special 2, Electromagnetic Beam. The first hit consumes all force field charge, increasing attack rating by 2800 for each force field charge for the duration of the special attack. Now, that is a big attack increase. If Guardian has 3+ force field charges, consume 1 armor buff, inflicting a shock debuff, dealing 5700 energy over 3 seconds. And that is also quite a big shock. So this attack cannot be evaded by mutant champions. Fair enough, mutants are just getting kind of like screwed over by this guy in general, so you never want to use mutant against this guy. But yeah, so seemingly Special 2 is where the damage is at. Now, how big the damage is actually going to be, we obviously need to wait and see when we see gameplay itself. But yeah, that is also going to be more or less the way you're going to play Red Guardian, sorry, Guardian, not Red Guardian, Guardian. In majority of the cases, you're just going to build up straight to level 2. If you do want to keep your OG armor buff, you will throw a heavy attack, thus gain a temporary armor buff, throw your level 2, consume that armor buff and deal a whole bunch of damage. That's about it. On activation, special 3 now. On activation, gains 6 indefinite force field charges, so that's a good amount of force field charges, and this most importantly lets you actually stack a lot of them. So for some really long fights and maybe some cheesy video, what you can do is you can keep throwing special 3s. Each and every single special 3 is going to give you 6 of these indefinite force field charges. And then if you consume, I don't know, after 10 level 3s, you're going to have like 63 of these. And after that, obviously, you're going to have a massive attack rating increase. So some really long fights, you should be able to drop absolutely insane level 2. But that, again, is not necessarily going to mean that he has a high damage output. It's going to have a really high ramp up. It's kind of like a similar thing Invisible Woman can do, where you can keep building up your force field with level 1s and level 3s. And then when you have like, I don't know, 1000 force field, you can drop a level 2 with a massive fury buff, which I have showcased in the video. So he will be able to do something similar to that, where under very specific set of circumstances, he's going to be able to do a whole lot of damage. Also, special 3 inflicts a shock debuff, dealing 3451 energy damage over 20 seconds. So that's a really long-lasting shock debuff. Signature ability: while Guardian has an armor up effect, gain the following: block proficiency. So he's going to have a huge block proficiency when awakened, huge energy resistance, bleed resistance, and critical damage resistance. And this is kind of like the key bit about a Red Guardian. About Guardian, sorry, I generally think about made a mistake calling him Guardian after releasing Red Guardian 2 months ago, but whatever. So yeah, his signature ability at SIG 200 will gain him an insane block proficiency, energy resistance, bleed resistance, and critical damage resistance as well. So that will lead to him being like a really tanky champion. And overall, this is it. That's like it of his abilities. And there are no secrets, no crazy rotations, no insane power gains. None of that. Is very simple champion for 2020, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but which also kind of leads me to believe that he's either going to be very defensive character who just happens to be like very tanky. Depending on his special attack animations, he might be really hard on defense as well, but he clearly has relatively simple and easy counters. You just get rid of the armor up buff and then he's going to be like squishy, I assume. But the whole idea behind him, he kind of, to me, looks like a very kind of like, yeah, stocky defensive guy without too much offensive capability. He's going to have some decent burst damage on level 2s. And as I said, if you really want to dedicate yourself to building up some insane damage, you need to drop multiple level 3s. And then you can explode with a level 2. But overall, I don't expect his damage output to be overly great or impressive. And unfortunately, when it comes to his actual utilities, he doesn't have too much. There's like no true strike. There is no, I don't know, evade countering. There are no direct immunities, even though having huge energy resistance and bleed resistance will make him semi-bleed, shock, and incinerate immune. But poison still gonna wreck him though. Cold Snap also semi-immune. And yeah, so he's going to be quite an interesting character. He is certainly, in my opinion, going to be in keeping with the theme of 2020, where the champions are fun, neat, nice, solid. I don't think he's going to conquer anybody's top tier list. I don't think he's going to be the must-have champion for offensive use, maybe because of the stubborn tactic. He could see some more use against specific matchups, because as I mentioned, some of those abilities seem suspiciously tailored towards stubborn. But based on his defensive animations, based on his special attack animations, I think he might largely end up being like a defensive tank powerhouse type of a champion. And yeah, I don't see kind of like too many wild combo wombos abilities that he might be able to throw outside of the couple that I have mentioned. So I think he's going to be a relatively simple, solid, stocky guy with pretty much all of his damage hidden in the level 2, because he doesn't have, he will never crit. He doesn't have any furies or any other artificial damage increasing abilities outside of level 2. So he's going to be level 2 or nothing type of champion, in my opinion, which is actually quite a big trend these days. And many champions, especially in 2020, have been exactly like that, where their main goal is get to level 2 and deal a bunch of damage. Anyways, let's quickly go through the synergies. So first and foremost, Guardian has a synergy with himself where all champions except Guardian gains 1000 block proficiency. So he has one of those kind of like Heimdall-like synergies. In this case, he's going to buff everybody's block proficiency. And that's kind of neat. That's cool. Certainly would have been much more anticipated and helpful before Act 6 attack values get nerfed, because that block damage was quite cray-cray. But yeah, now it's still obviously going to be useful in like variants and stuff like that. All your champions will effectively just be able to block better, so that's definitely kind of like a nice solid bonus to the character and having him on your team. On guard for the 3, Wolverine, Sabretooth, Squirrel Girl, Deadpool. All champions except Guardian. The first 3 blocks have 100% chance to be perfect blocks. Unique synergy does not stack with duplicate synergies. Now, this is also kind of interesting, especially because there are some champions who activate abilities when they do happen to perfect block opponent. Like Domino, for instance, gains a chunk of power whenever she perfect blocks opponent. Having Guardian, Sabretooth, and Domino on your team will let Domino race to the level 2 a lot quicker, because when you parry, you automatically first 3 times are going to get a burst of power. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, don't think it's overall going to be the craziest synergy. So Alpha Flight with Sasquatch, Guardian, well-timed blocks inflict a shock debuff, dealing 50% of attack rating as energy damage over 2 seconds. This again can be quite neat if you need to kind of like get to your shocks a lot often and simply. Then yeah, you can basically kind of, I don't know, probably blade a couple of fights where you can just place shocks on opponents all the time. But yeah, this is a solo synergy. Synergy with Mole Man, Guardian. Each time Guardian would gain a force field charge, and he has no force field charges, gain 1 charge. Don't think it's going to be the craziest synergy, but certainly useful when blocking a hit to gain unstoppable. Do not consume monster mass. Again, it's Mole Man. Who really cares there? Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler. You gain armor rating, and with Red Hulk and Spider-Man, you gain perfect block chance. Recommended master is Double Edge, obviously, because he is going to be able to heal with Suicide Masteries. That is also something interesting, and since his playstyle doesn't really involve gaining a whole lot of power and spamming special attacks outside of realistically building to a level 2, I think he's going to be overly quite suicide friendly, because yeah, he's going to be healing more from willpower than the bleed is going to be able to deal the damage if he's awakened and high sig. So all in all, I think he looks quite solid. I don't think he is hype or next Ghost or whatever. I don't think he's going to be the absolutely must-have champion of 2020. But there are a lot of small, solid bits that overall are going to make him quite useful, in my opinion. He's going to be a bit more scaled version of Warlock, in my opinion, where he has that armor buff. He's going to be quite tanky. He's going to be situationally quite good against like Havocs. He's going to have slight access to power control as well, and he doesn't crit, so he's going to be able to counter flow, and he inflicts shock damage, so he's going to be able to bypass some damage cap nodes. So I think there are going to be a whole lot of small bits of utility, which is going to situationally make him useful again and again and again. Kind of like how Havoc became popular. And yeah, I think it's a very solid, simple kind of like baseline design. But again, what's the best way to put it? Vast majority of this guy's usefulness offensively will obviously depend on his damage. Whether his damage is kind of hitting the bare minimum to be a viable counter. And I'm actually somewhat soon gonna make a video talking about damage numbers in MCOC in general, and how damage today in 2020 is baseline necessity for a champion to be viable, regardless of any and all utilities or lack of utilities. Like an example, for instance, Terex could be actually a really cool champion, but just the fact that he has absolutely no damage makes him, well, not used anywhere by anyone realistically offensively, because why would you take a 300 hit fight if you want to finish the fight in 40 hits? And so there is a baseline of damage that champion has to meet to be useful, and then everything else kind of gets judged by how much extra damage he deals or how much extra utility he has. And he will have a lot of small bits of utility, nothing overly insanely crazy, but there are definitely a lot of things that I do like about him. But in order for that to be relevant, he has to meet a baseline damage expectation, and then we can talk about how current the champion is going to be and how popular he's going to be. But yeah, I think that will more or less do for today. I'm not going to keep you guys any longer. Probably already the video is too long than I wanted it to be. But hey, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, well, then I almost forgot, but I didn't. So leave a comment in comment section with hashtag Guardian, not Red Guardian. And as you are looking at Baby Yoda and you're being mesmerized by the beauty and cuteness of this creature, please hit that like button, please hit that sub button, please hit all the buttons. Let me know what you think, how good Guardian is going to be. Share this video with your alliance mates and encourage them to discuss the upcoming champion for month of July in Marvel Concept Champions. But yeah, that is it, and I'll catch you guys soon. See ya.